Welcome to the channel, everyone. It's the 14th of January, and as always, we're here from the opposition, standing on the other side like the good journalist that never stops questioning what's happening on the political stage. Get comfortable. We've got a juicy analysis of what's going on in British politics today, with that critical eye we've come to be known for. If you haven't yet, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to join our ever-growing community. Let's dive in.
The air was thick with tension in the television studio. As the camera zoomed in on the sharp, focused expression of the journalist, viewers knew that the questions coming would be cutting. The last interview with the Chancellor had been nothing short of a battlefield, and this one was shaping up to be no different. Headlines from the previous day were already talking about the chaos brewing within the government, a chaos that seemed to have no end in sight. British politics had entered a phase of patchwork solutions and empty promises. The journalist, a seasoned veteran in the political world, sat across from the Chancellor, adjusting his glasses with a look of quiet defiance. Beside him, the Chancellor, ever the picture of composure, tried to maintain his cool, though his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. The room was filled with opposition journalists, all waiting for the moment to strike and uncover the truths the government had been trying so hard to conceal. Minister, you've claimed time and again that the foundations are fixed. Yet here we are, still facing stagnation. How do you explain that? The journalist's voice sliced through the silence, sharp and direct. The Chancellor, standing with a carefully maintained calm, gave a slow nod before responding. Well, we are in the process of recovery, as we've outlined in our latest investment program. It's a long-term vision, and we're already seeing progress. The journalist, never one to let a vague answer slide, leaned forward with a steely gaze. Progress, Minister? Because from where I'm sitting, what we're seeing are promises of no more tax hikes vanishing into thin air. How is it that you can claim progress when the numbers simply don't add up? Growth is stagnant. Businesses aren't impressed, and once again, you've had to patch things up. The Chancellor's facade of calm wavered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. The numbers don't tell the full story. There's a strategy in place that requires time to bear fruit. We've made necessary adjustments to ensure stability in the economy. Stability? The journalist's eyebrow arched, the tone laced with disbelief. You call this stability? All we've seen is more of the same. Empty promises, half-hearted measures, and a lack of real action. The people are fed up, Minister. They're sick of hearing the same excuses. Where are the results? The Chancellor swallowed, his jaw tightening slightly, but he held his ground. What I'm saying is that we are moving forward, despite the challenges. It's not an easy task, but the government is committed to the plan. Moving forward? The journalist laughed, the sound a sharp contrast to the serious tone of the conversation. That's rich. The only thing long-term about this government is how long it's taken to do absolutely nothing. A murmur rippled through the room, and the tension became almost palpable. It was clear the journalist had struck a nerve. The Chancellor, however, refused to let it show. We are moving forward in our investment plans, he repeated, his voice more defensive now. And it's worth mentioning that we're not looking for quick fixes. We're rebuilding the foundations for the long-term stabilities. The journalist smirked, a knowing glint in his eye. Minister, the only thing that's long-term about this government is how long it's been promising things it hasn't delivered. The public is fed up. They don't want more platitudes. They want action. The room grew quieter as the journalists around them exchanged knowing looks. It was clear they had seen this dance before. The Chancellor's answers were nothing new, and the frustration in the air was tangible. The journalist leaned in closer, his voice lowering in a tone that suggested he wasn't finished yet. Minister, we've heard this all before. We're tired of the same rhetoric. The people are struggling, businesses are struggling, and yet all we get is another rehash of the same tired promises. Your investment program may sound good on paper, but it's not making a difference. So, tell me, when will we see the results you keep talking about? The Chancellor, visibly uncomfortable now, struggled for a moment to gather his thoughts. His usual polished responses were slipping, but he managed to speak. We're seeing progress. It's just that these things take time. Our strategy is designed to build a solid foundation. Progress. The journalist interrupted, his tone sharp. Minister, if that's what you're calling progress, I dread to think what failure looks like. The room fell into a tense silence, and the Chancellor's frustration was clear now. He knew that the journalist wasn't going to let up. His usual talking points were being dismantled with ease, and the walls of his carefully constructed narrative were starting to crumble. Well, we're not in the business of quick fixes, the Chancellor said, his voice more defensive now. Our policies are designed for long-term benefits, and we're taking the necessary steps. Long-term? The journalist scoffed. Minister, the only thing long-term about this government is how long it's been taking to do absolutely nothing. We've had endless promises, yet nothing has changed. The room was charged with a quiet but palpable tension as the other journalists nodded in agreement. They could see that the Chancellor was stuck in a loop of repetition, unable to break free from the confines of his prepared statements. Minister, let's cut to the chase, the journalist said, his tone now unwavering. The public doesn't want more empty promises. They want tangible results. They want to know what's being done to help businesses, to address the issues they face every day. So, what are you going to do differently? The Chancellor hesitated for a moment, the weight of the question sinking in. We are working on it, he replied, though his voice was no longer as confident as before. The investment program will lead to growth. It just takes time. The journalist, having heard enough, stood his ground. Minister, people don't want to wait for something that might never come. The time for excuses is over. The public needs answers. They need to know that this government is actually in control and not just playing the same old game. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed, but he held his ground. We're doing everything we can to ensure growth, he said, his voice now tinged with frustration. We're committed to the strategy. Committed to the strategy? The journalist scoffed. Minister, your strategy has been a disaster. The public doesn't want to hear about your long-term plans. They want results, and they want them now. A long silence hung in the air as the tension reached its peak. The journalists, sensing the moment of vulnerability, exchanged looks of understanding. The Chancellor, once so composed, was now floundering, and his carefully crafted narrative was beginning to fall apart. Minister, the journalist said, his voice steady and resolute, the only thing under control right now is your ability to spin stories. The public is done with the empty promises. It's time for action. And if you can't deliver, perhaps it's time for someone else to take the reins. The room seemed to hold its breath, the weight of the moment settling over the Chancellor. There was no more room for excuses, no more room for vague promises. The public wanted change, and it was clear that, for all his assurances, the government had yet to deliver.